I tell people like the secret to having an effective estate plan comes down to you. You are like, you are the secret, because it's only like, all organization is only as good as how well the person follows the system.
Hello, and welcome to Financials Podcast, Future Rich. I'm your host, Barbara Ginty, and I'm also a CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner. And I'm thrilled to have my guest here today, Jen Gumbel. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So, Jen, your specialty is estate planning, and I was watching the Wendy Williams documentary, which I highly recommend because it's terrifying. And I messaged you, and I was like, oh my God, I need to have you back on the show because this seems preventable, and yet we hear about these we keep hearing about it because Britney Spears was in a guardianship. Now we're hearing about Wendy Williams, and the interesting thing about Wendy Williams is apparently was petitioned by Wells Fargo, her financial advisor, which is strange.
Not typical. Yeah, it's not typical.
Yeah, I was like, wow, we've never had, as a financial advisor, I've never had to do that. I feel like we have a protocol in place for if we feel that somebody is not a sound mind, like we know who we have a call, like we basically have people on file that the client has approved that if we have questions about their mental capacity of like who they want us to call. So that was really surprising, and then I did a little more digging. There are 1 million Americans that are under a conservatorship or guardianship, right? I mean, it's anonymous, right? Which is shocking. That is so many people. Like you can't get that many people in a stadium.
Yeah, I mean, we hear it periodically with, Britney Spears and these celebrity situations, but they're very common, and just different states kind of do them slightly different. So you're going to hear different terminology. I know I'm based in Minnesota, and the guardianships are like one thing, conservatorships are another thing, and sometimes you have both or one or the other, but they're similar, right? Like inserting someone out, like taking away power and inserting someone else in that role.
And you have less rights than like a prisoner.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I think that needs to be highlighted because I think that people are like, oh, it's just somebody making your financial decisions. No. You have to
this is a whole different ball of wax.
You're basically in a prison with less rights.
Yeah. I mean, so far as legal rights go, I mean, this is a nuclear option where the court is saying we're going to remove your legal authority and your legal autonomy. That's a big deal.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
it's literally the biggest thing the court can do.
Yeah, I feel like every single person should have like watched that doc or have been like hearing or reading about Britney Spears and been like, no way in hell is that ever going to happen to me. It's not happening. Right?
Well, and so many people, either don't think they have enough wealth to do an estate plan, or they're too young to do an estate plan. I say everyone needs to do an estate plan because as soon as you turn 18, if you have nothing else, you have your autonomy, and what your plan looks like at different points will look different. The documents you do are going to look different. But yeah, I mean, as soon as you're 18, you have autonomy, and in certain scenarios, it could be taken away from you. And what do you do? Like, what can you do to line things up so you don't run into these issues?
Yeah, or your parent.
Right.
Like the other article I read, and we'll link these articles, was about a perfectly stable, successfully retired older gentleman who had a medical event. And because the hospital didn't have any records, they petitioned. And it took, I mean, the problem is once you get into it, you can't get out of it.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, so like because it's the biggest thing a court can do, then it's one of the most bureaucratic things there is. And like when the Britney Spears conservatorship, guardianship, California kind of throws those names all together, but that particular situation, it was really surprising to me how the state of California goes about it. My state of Minnesota is quite a bit different. Or the Michael Orr case, or so many of these cases where my state is very like methodical, and happily they seem to be a decently funded court system. And our scenario tries to protect people from like quote unquote like nefarious actors from inserting themselves, getting the power taken away too quick, and then not having any oversight. We have an incredible amount of oversight, but
Okay.
that's a double-edged sword
Because
because
it's more paperwork, it's
yes,
longer. Yeah. Because the oversight is like good, but that means there's people and paperwork. And depending on how much
yes,
oversight the court, because like I think people sometimes are like, oh, well, like it's in the court, it'll, yeah, the court, do you know what time they work till 5? They literally leave at 5. They're not like,
yeah,
oh, this needs to
right.
get done. I think I'll stay till 6.
And this is something that was really became crystal clear, especially again, like I'm in a state, I first of all, I'm in the state of Prince. That's like our most favorite, like famous a state issue ever, and it probably will be forever and
Mm-hmm.
ever. But our court system is very transparent. It's
And Prince the artist is who you're referring to.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. That was a famous another.
Is there
Once
any other
again,
kind?
there
I'm
once
in Minnesota, like there's no other kind.
one of the most famous estate cases.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So different states are vastly different, but what became crystal clear during COVID is these matters when a court system doesn't have the time it used to have, doesn't have the funding or staffing it used to have, is that these things can start to fall towards the bottom when they're looking at stuff like, well, we got to deal with criminals
Mm-hmm.
and victims issues and constitutional rights and we got to work with divorces and we got to do like emergencies, and these are
Mm-hmm.
emergencies too, but these tend to be the things that fall to the bottom. And so yeah, that became crystal clear if it wasn't already through COVID.
COVID. Yeah, and for people
Yeah.
that don't realize, my sister works as a bureau chief, so she works as a prosecutor.
Oh yeah.
The volume of cases that the
Mhm.
local DA's office or the local court systems have
Yeah.
is enormous. Like one attorney
Right.
might be in charge of 400 to 600 cases.
And it doesn't keep up. Like the system
No.
resources, like they're not overstaffed. They're always playing catch up. And so you don't want to be caught in that system.
Right. And so like, yes, the oversight is great, but that just means that your process is going to be extended.
Yes.
But there is, and the other one we didn't mention is the movie I Care a Lot, which
Mm-hmm.
I watched that with my now husband, and he was like, well, this is fake. And I'm like, no, this is a
No.
real life scenario. This is 100%, this can actually happen the way they're doing it. Now, maybe in the movie, I won't give it all away. I think the son is like a drug lord or something. So maybe that part isn't true. But what happens, like what actually happens in that movie has happened to 1 million Americans. And not all of them are corrupt, but the cases of corruption where the guardian appointed is enriching themselves is making the news on a regular basis these days.
Well, and that was kind of the surprising thing with the Britney Spears, because they had it was like this weird, like this weird setup of economics where people had an incentive to keep things going on both sides of the transaction, on both sides of the scenario. And so it was really hard for the person who was subject to it to be in any place to have someone say this needs to stop. No one had an incentive to say this must stop, and
because everybody's on the gravy train making great money off of Britney Spears. So
yeah, I mean, it was a big deal, and no one had the incentive to raise their hand and say stop, except for her. And once she got that,
and she had no legal rights. She had no legal rights to say. So they've stripped you of your rights, and now you're like, look, everybody. And I hate to use the word steal, but kind of,
yeah,
enrich.
And also let's be clear, many times, maybe even the vast majority of times, there's something that's needed. There are truly people who are vulnerable adults who are in a position where they cannot make choices for themselves.
Yep.
That person has to be inserted, but you do get caught up in a system, and families get caught up in a system. If you're in a scenario where you have a loved one who, let's say they're suffering from dementia, and they start to progress to a point, and if they haven't done anything to take steps to say, if I need someone to help me, here's who I trust. Here's who the court should appoint if they need to take away my power. But maybe it doesn't come to that because I've allowed someone in to help, sign off on things for me. So maybe I'm not at a point where my power needs to also be taken away. And these families are caught up in the systems themselves because they need to figure out how to get the money to put, to approach the court and ask for these things. And then they're caught in the system. So like here, it's we have very strict rules about you need to report every year. You need to do an accounting that is through the state through a state specific online accounting system. So our state happens to watch things like a hawk, and that's great. We love that. However, what does that mean?
Well, Florida
for normal people, it's really hard and expensive to do.
Yes. Well, and certain states where they're going to have higher volume, right? Like Florida has a lot of, I don't know, I don't want to say steal. They have a lot of issues, right? Where people are
they might not have
caught,
right? That some other, like some states will have a lot of oversight, and that'll protect, for the protection of the person under the guardianship conservatorship. And that's really good, but that's really rough on families who were kind of forced into a situation. And it's really cumbersome to deal with and expensive. But then you have kind of the other end of the spectrum where like maybe it's easier to slip through. You don't have to do all the same kind of requirements, but then people can start to, you don't have the oversight. And
take advantage. Maybe I won't say steal, but like take advantage of where they're overbilling, or like in this one article, if anyone reads it, we'll link it. The house was sold like below market. Like it was sold immediately, like stuff happened way too fast. Like, I don't know that the family, once the rights are taken away, the family's not involved.
And this is a great example of the double-edged sword. Minnesota, that would never happen. Here's why. You need to have a court hearing to approve a sale, and then a second court hearing to confirm the sale happened. So that would never happen in Minnesota. That sounds great. Except the conservator can't just sign a purchase agreement. They have to find a buyer that's willing to wait for that system, and however long it's going to take for the court to put that on the calendar. They have to, some of those proceeds are going to be going to the conservator, to the attorney for the conservator, to the court system to have this, so it's all a double-edged sword. There's no great like system that works well. All to say, you do not want to be caught up in this.
Yeah, I mean, I find it terrifying. And obviously as a financial advisor, nobody says, I hope to lose my mental capacity. Someone's worst nightmare. No, it's true. Like, I think that what I think, to me, like what I see, I don't want to say, I see horrible things. I see people who go from being perfectly healthy to not perfectly healthy. Yeah. That's horrible. Right. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that for their spouse or their parent. But the way I look at it is, the scarier option is that happens, and now you're dragged through a horrible court process where the rights are stripped and the whole family, you're paying all these fees, and it's all during work hours. So now you're missing, because no one talks about this. Yeah. If you have an ailing parent and you're in this system, good luck trying to be at work. Good luck trying to maintain your own income.
Right? The full-time job of caregiving.
It is. And it often falls on women.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is when you look at the numbers of it. I posted an Instagram reel that has the numbers, and this is why I got into the law, is like, I'm not going to have numbers top of mind, but it's something crazy. Like caregivers, 2/3 of it are women. And the amount of hours that you lose, and the amount of wealth of your own that you could have generated that you didn't, and like all of those things.
And I think the thing that people don't highlight enough is, like, if this, God forbid, happened to your parent, you will be dealing with the court system 9 to 5. Often they won't accept an email. You will be physically dropping off paperwork or faxing it. Good luck finding a fax machine. Some of the court systems say, fax it to us. Who has a fax machine? Often we hear from the court system, we don't email. How email? But if that's the court you're dealing with, good luck. You'll be driving over there to physically drop a document Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Oh, and they take lunch. So not during your lunch break.
Your lunch. No, you got to figure
Yeah. They're never like, oh, you want to do Friday evening at 9? That's convenient. Your kids are in bed. And we're going to do it via email. Like, no, I don't think so. Like, so the time that to deal with the court system, to me, is like, nobody discusses what that process is like, and the fact that it's going to be during your work hours, not your lunch break.
Yeah. It's not set up for the convenience of the people. It is a, like, it's like a public service,
Mhm.
right? And you have to live your life around that, you know? And so, yeah, it's something that if you like, it's something that you should try to avoid. And the thing is, like, you won't be able to control your health. You won't be able to control the fact, you know, number one, that you'll die, or when you will. That's
Right.
uncontrollable. Like, let's just put that out there right away, is
Right.
you don't have control over any of this.
No.
But you do have control over getting a strategy and a plan in place to say, like, okay, if I start to lose my mental capacity, are the people I trust in place? Have I like signed what I need to sign so that the court has the communication to them to say, oh, this is the one I trust? Do my trusted people, are they going to be able to talk to the bank, to my financial advisor, to do things for me if I can't, without having to go through the court system? Can I set that up
Again,
already? Yeah.
right. So that's what I want to talk about, because I'm a big fan of estate planning, and I require that we do it with our clients. Like, we have to sit down and say, if
Have you done it?
yeah, and I have a form, and if you would like to move forward without doing it, I just need you to sign on it that we've discussed it, and you have, because everyone's allowed to make a bad decision,
Right.
but I am not going to be liable for your bad decision. So
I just need to know that we talked about it.
I just need you to acknowledge that I've told you you should meet with an estate planning attorney. If you choose not to, and you know, some people, we can do a lot with beneficiary stuff. They still need the regular workup, will, healthcare, proxy, power of attorney. Yeah,
Well,
yeah. All.
You know, this is why I love financial advisors, right? Because they're like, well, what about the beneficiary designation? And so, you know, this is kind of getting to, you know, estate plans. I often get the question of like, what is that? And it's, what are the legal issues that are going to pop up if you become incapacitated, so that you aren't caught up in a system, either through, you know, nefarious people, or the court
bad
system,
actors.
Yeah. And then so what are the legal issues there, and what can you do to prevent them, or minimize them, or make them easier? And then when you pass away, what are the legal issues that are going to pop up? And it's a legal event. Death is a legal event. It's unavoidable. And so such an important piece of an effective estate plan isn't simply getting your strategy in place with good legal documents. And of course, I'm a huge proponent of good legal documents. I'm a huge proponent of doing those with professionals who can strategize the right for you, all that stuff. But there's a key piece of this that isn't talked about a whole lot. And financial advisors have their finger on the pulse of this, is, you know, there's your plan, there's your strategy. I think of it as an organizational system, you know, just like in a closet or in a pantry. But are your things organized within that system? You know, what do your beneficiary designations say? Does it say your ex-wife? Because that's a problem, you know?
Yeah, and I will say, there's a lot of financial advisors. I will say the good financial advisors work with an estate planning attorney to make sure it's right. Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last 3 years, I've been drinking AG1 every day with no exceptions. It's just 1 scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes me feel ready to take on my day. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. With AG1, I know I'm getting essential brain, gut, and immune health support with vitamins, probiotics, and nutrients from whole foods. I like to think of it as my nutritional insurance. I know I'm covering my nutritional bases from the very start of the day. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1, and that's why I've partnered with them for so long. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3+K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/future rich. That's drinkag1.com/future rich. Check it out. And I also am always very hesitant of somebody who's like, I do it all. Like the financial advisor, the accountant, and I'm an attorney. I really feel like these are specialties.
Yes.
And
I look at it the same way. Yep.
The financial advisor should be your quarterback and be working with the other experts.
Yes.
And putting it all together.
Your wealth.
Yes. And making sure that I always, with our clients, coordinate with the estate planning attorney.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it could be done if it wasn't coordinated.
Yeah, there are so many scenarios where there's great legal documents, but the assets are often, you know, the deeds, the
Yes.
benefit, and they're off doing other stuff. And suddenly, you know, maybe we did a trust and there's
And
still,
never
you know,
got funded. The financial advisor didn't know you had the trust because the
yeah,
attorney never called the financial advisor. And the client, no offense, the client got the binder, which has the trust in
yeah,
it. And I've had this happen for people who have not listened, who were like, oh, yeah,
yeah.
I did. Oh, I didn't tell you. I went and met with a trust attorney. That's great.
Hmm.
What's in your trust? Oh, all my, honest to God, this happened meeting. All my, everything's in the trust. I was like, name what's
No,
in
it's
the
not.
trust. And he named the account with me. He had an account somewhere else. He's like, they're in there. And I was like, how do you think they got in there? Like magic? Did you wave a wand? And he goes to
Correct.
me, what do you
Correct.
mean? And I was like, you have a $3,000 binder. You bought a
Yes.
$3,000 binder. Did you read it? And he was like, well, no. And I was like, so the attorney in my opinion, for that binder, they should have been much clearer. Like, this
Yeah.
is just the mechanism. You need to fund it. He didn't listen. Like, he didn't go to we have recommended attorneys, and I always say, please don't do anything
Mhm.
without involving me
Right.
because of
Hmm.
this. But I was like, no, sir, you have a $3,000 binder, and I don't know if you thought a magician
Yes.
came with it that waved a wand and put everything in, but you have nothing in your trust. You have a
Right.
trust document only.
Right. So like these systems are super helpful, right? Because like if you have a trust, if you have a financial power of attorney and you start to lose capacity, you have rules, you have mechanisms, you
Mm-hmm.
selected the trustworthy people in your life to fill these functions. And so you're like with these documents, you've protected yourself. But then like after that, like how do you minimize, you know, the legal issues? You get a really good system in place, but you got to get your assets to follow the plan, you
Yep.
know, and where, you know, beneficiary designations, deeds, those kinds of things are huge. And
I
that's
take
why,
paperwork for like I think
mhm,
the things people miss is like if you work, this is why everyone should work together. But like
mhm,
once the attorney like you drafts this, then I need to redraft everything I have here to match
mhm,
your draft.
absolutely. Yes. And I tell people like the secret to having an effective estate plan comes down to you. You
Yep,
are like, you are the secret because it's only like all organization is only as good as how well the person follows
yep,
the system.
totally.
So yeah, so like, you know, around here we have a lot of cabins. People will get you know, people get cabins. And if you set up an estate plan, you get a cabin and your cabin is that deed doesn't point to the trust at some point, I can guarantee we have to go through the court system when you pass away.
Because real
Like,
property, just for everyone listening, real property is a probate trigger, which means a court
yes.
trigger. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's super important. And that's why like getting, you know, and again, like these things, they are a justice issue, they are a gender issue.
Yep.
And so it's so incredibly important. I think there's a lot of either fear about this topic because it's money, it's lawyers, and it's death. All of
Yeah.
those are young, right?
Let's get together. Everybody's like, no, thank you.
All of those. Money's great, but like talking about it, heck no. And people feel like it's complicated. There's online, there's not great information out there.
I know.
It's so like spotty. Like
Mm-hmm.
usually the information is very hard to read because it's professionals writing for other professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not together in a way that makes any sort of sense.
And also,
Where
when you're Googling, this is the thing that I think people forget. I've been in finance, I think 17 years now. You've been doing this a long time.
Mhm,
This is your first go at it, right?
mhm,
Statistically, you're not going to be as confident in it or as successful in it as somebody who has, almost 2 decades of experience doing it on a regular basis, right? And you also won't know what to Google. That's the thing, right? You don't
yeah,
know what you don't know. So, yes, you
exactly.
may be able to download, I'll just say, a power of attorney. Well, in New York State, did you get the gift rider added? Because that power of attorney is effectively useless unless you're trying to move
Mhm,
$10,000. You don't even need it,
mhm,
really. So if you don't know that
yep.
tidbit, which you would never know until
Mhm,
you find out that the power of attorney you downloaded that doesn't have the gift writer on it because no one
mhm,
mentioned that and you didn't know to Google it, is almost ineffective or I don't want to
Yeah.
say useless. It's better than nothing, but it's not effective for what
And
most people would need.
what you need it to do or what you think it's doing. And we get that a lot here where it's very easy for us to try and prevent probate, just the ways our laws are set up. And
same with New York State. It's easy to, a lot of, depending on the state, but most states it's easy to prevent probate. And that's avoiding court.
You have a good strategy and if you're kind of aware of what you need to do. And so many people on their own think, well, will prevents probate. No, it tells the court what to do. It is for the probate system.
I feel like the title of just this podcast should be like, a will triggers probate. Hello. Everyone says to me, like, I have a will. Great, you're going to the court system. No, I'm not. Yeah. Yes, you are.
You're better off than Prince because he didn't have any. And so Minnesota was like, I guess this is where we're just going to send it because you didn't tell us. So like wills are important to say where you want things to go, but you're planning for your administration to be through that bureaucratic system. Yes. And you don't need to do that. Like if you set up a trust, that's your administration like that's administration on your terms. And it can be administration before you pass away if you're incapacitated, help prevent, the need for a conservatorship or a guardianship. So like all these tools can work really well. But again, like people doing their, doing their documents online, that's not a plan. Like your strategy is particular to you. What documents do you need? Are those documents saying what you think they're saying? Are they actually signed or are they like not, is the court going to ignore them because you didn't go through the hoops you need to do? So there's all of that stuff. And then this understanding, like, I need my assets to follow the plan. I need my deeds right. I like what should those say? And it's so incredibly important to have a basic like level of knowledge about this kind of stuff. You don't have to be like in depth or like, that's what professionals are for, right?
Right. But I do understand working knowledge. Don't you think someone should be able to articulate what their plan is themselves?
They should. And unfortunately, there's like not many good ways to like get up to speed. Right. Like when I meet with people, I kind of recognize the face that a lot of people make. And it's a face that I made when I first got my car. I was driving it around and I needed to take it to a mechanic and I didn't know how a car worked. I was like, put gas in car, great. And I went to a mechanic, they'd be like, yeah, your serpentine belt's busted. And I'd be like, I don't know what that means. I trust you. And that's like so many people go into the estate planning process, whether they're trying an online, like a DIY provider, or they're meeting with a professional. They're just like, I hope it works. And this stuff is way too important to kind of leave it like, it's so, and this was the frustration that I found is that they're like, I wasn't seeing any way where people were able to get up to speed in the way they needed to. Mm-hmm. Again, justice issue, gender issue. This is a big deal. And so that's why I do all my stuff online is to provide resources, including kind of a course where you can get your bearings.
Yeah, because it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming.
How it all fits together. Yeah. To like be able to like know what you should look for in a professional. When you meet with that professional, be able to vet him and not have to kind of cross your fingers and hope, but be like, no, I know what's going on. I know why they did what they did. I know what they were telling me. Like I understood it because I understand like, oh yeah, trust versus a will, get that understood, and then be able to walk through that, professional, let them draft, let them strategize, let's do all that stuff. And then when you walk away,
custom. What you're not downloading a template. And look, I am all for like, I'd rather have you have a DIY will than nothing. But at a certain point, this should be a priority because I agree. Mm-hmm. It's so people are like, oh, well, I don't really have the money. Well, you really can't afford to not do this, in my opinion, for most people, especially when your life gets to a certain level. Yeah, if you're single, maybe you have IKEA furniture. If you're not even thinking about it. But when you start to get
and that's the thing too. It's like, if you're 18, if you're 20, if you're 25 and you don't have a whole lot of wealth, you can still like call around to an attorney and say like, I'm interested, I don't have a whole lot, but I'm interested in dealing with incapacity. What would you charge for healthcare directive, power of attorney, sit down. And that might be within your budget and you are getting that expertise.
Yeah. So I agree. But I think that as your life gets more complicated, the way I've always thought about it is the court system is comprised of attorneys, right? It's comprised of attorneys. So you're either paying the attorney upfront at a
Yes.
negotiated rate, the rate you choose to pay with the attorney
Mhm.
you've chosen, or you're going to
Mhm.
pay the attorneys a penalty when you go through the court system.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
not at your choice, and it's not, there's no rate discussion.
Right.
You could shop around and find an
Well,
attorney that
some
you
states
like. Yeah.
like here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. This doesn't happen in my state. Like this doesn't happen in my state. Because Minnesota is very thoughtful and they don't like this. But lots of states are where either they let the court system take a percentage of your estate as the court fee,
Yep.
where it's like it is tens of thousands of dollars to even be heard by the court. Doesn't happen here. The filing fee for Prince was $350.
You guys are nice.
Yeah.
This is like a little promo to move to your state.
Like we have taxes, but we don't get you other ways. And then attorneys in many states, like our neighbor to the south, Iowa allows this, many states allow this, where the
Yep.
attorneys can take a percentage of the estate as a fee. Like you don't choose that. You don't your loved ones don't shop around. It is what it is. We don't
So
get to do that.
let's just
But
give a real number so people understand, because people will say to me, well, I don't want to spend $3,000 on an
Yeah.
estate plan, like to meet with the attorney or whatever.
Mhm.
And everyone is entitled to their opinion, but to give you an idea,
Mhm.
if you're, depending on the state you live in, you would need to check. But if you had a $500,000 estate, or your parent had a $500,000 estate, and it goes to the court system, and they're able to take, we'll just say a 5% fee, that is $25,000.
Mhm.
That's what I always say. The thing is, the people are like, well, I don't want to pay. It's like, you are paying. You're going to pay one way or the
Mhm.
other. The
Gonna
difference
cost
is,
money. Yeah.
it's cheaper if you shop around and pick somebody you like,
Mhm.
that somebody you're comfortable with, and you know what the rate is. You don't know. I mean, apparently it's okay in your state, but you'd have to check your state to see, is there
Well,
a
and
court fee? Yeah.
it's like, for a long time, because our state is so nice, it's like, oh, well, a trust, but then like, if they have to do it later, it's not going to be, tens of thousands of dollars, but it's still bureaucracy. It is
Mm-hmm.
still waiting times. It is still, frozen accounts. It's
Yeah,
a
frozen
night.
assets. Frozen
Yeah.
assets.
Yes. It's a nightmare, even in the states that are nice. And so like the ability to say, no, you know what, like enough of this. Number one, I'm going to make a commitment to reach out to a professional, but I'm also going to make the commitment to become an educated consumer and an
Yes.
educated implementer of my plan. And getting that information to be able to, vet a professional, make sure your plan happens, know what you need to do when you leave that attorney's office to make sure not only do you have legal documents, but your plan actually plays out how you want it to. And let me tell you, it's a night and day difference for the family. It's just massive.
Yeah.
It's just a night and day difference.
I completely agree. I think knowing when you leave the attorney, what is my obligation to make sure this works? Like what's my 1, 2, 3, 4? Like what's my homework? And then what's my advisor's homework? And in the best scenario, your advisor is already talking direct. Like I don't involve my clients in the conversations with we sign disclosure forms that are necessary. And then I work directly with the attorney. Like he sends over the draft of the trust. I let the client know you received it. We're retitling. It's all very seamless for the client because they put together the team, right? They're paying the professionals. They say, this is what I'm looking for. You guys take care of it. And we do. And it makes it, like, as you said, as of right now, death happens to everybody. You can't prevent it. Nobody's living forever, unfortunately, so it's just a matter of when and how prepared you are for it. But going back to this issue of the guardianship or conservatorship, depending on the state you're in, how do you prevent that? Because right now, 3 of 5, so even if, besides preventing it for yourself, like to me, it's like a big issue for a parent, right? Because that's 3 out of 5 Americans in their 80s are living alone, and you're more at risk for this living alone. Right? Because you go in the hospital and you have no family living around. The hospital doesn't, you're incapacitated. The hospital has no idea who to call.
Of like, oh, they have a kid on this healthcare directive that will, exactly.
So like, can you add this to your estate workup if we're referring to like power of attorney, healthcare proxy, let's say you have a will, maybe a trust, like, can it be in your power of attorney that like, should you become incapacitated, wouldn't your power of attorney take over? Like, would they be able to assign somebody from the court?
When you become incapacitated, there's going to be 2 questions at play. For most people, it's only going to stop at 1. And then once you get to the, so like the first one, I don't know why the video
balloons.
that's cool. Celebrated what I said, apparently. So the these things always have two components to it, and most people kind of stop at that first component, meaning I am not able to write checks, to monitor my accounts. I don't have the capacity to do that, to manage my finances. And if you haven't put someone in place, and you need to, there are these power of attorneys, that's the only way for you to say, this is the person who can sign off for me.
Yep.
And if you haven't done that, then the only way anyone can do that is to ask the court. And for most like systems, for most states, the court's only option is to take away your power in order to allow someone else to. So when you do something like a power of attorney, you're saying, oh, this person can sign as well as I can. Yep. And so what that does is, if you lose capacity, that person's already in place and they don't need to ask the court to be given that power, which usually involves taking away your own power. Now, there are some scenarios where people are making poor decisions for themselves, and they have to be protected from like themselves. If you have a trust-based system, that gets a lot easier to avoid, because the people that you've set up that you trust, they can start putting things within the trust and say, no, we're going to manage the money now.
Yep.
Until your authority is taken away, maybe you can pull stuff out, but they have a little bit more maneuverability to kind of say like, no,
Block
you
them.
can't just block an ATM. Yep. When you get like a spam emails asking for money, there is always a risk. Like, can I with certainty prevent? No, because if you're in a position where you are truly making like poor decisions to the point that you are harming yourself, either physically, financially, then the court system can come in either because your family petitions or the local government, like the county petitions. Yep. That's the vast majority of scenarios. Apparently Wendy Williams' case, like a financial institution petition, that's not that we
not
don't
normal.
See that. People can say like, I have to prove whatever the state says that I have to prove to show that this person needs to have their power taken away. But by doing things ahead of time and by lining things up, number one, you are preventing the need for it before prematurely.
Before it happens. Right? Yeah.
And then what you're also doing is you are documenting who you trust. And so that protects you from nefarious people. To say like, oh, I'm going to be like, I think I should be the conservator. I think, no, you're my black sheep child who shouldn't be trusted with anything. But how does the court know that? Well, they don't need to know that. They just need to know that I have picked that child or, whatever.
And I think the thing people also, I think a misconception is that needs to be the same person. Like your health person needs to be, it doesn't like for instance, my healthcare proxy person is my sister because she's so good. She takes very good notes, and I've watched her be my aunt's healthcare proxy. I was the backup, thank God. And so it would be her. And like legally, if it was just determined by the court, it would be my husband, and I don't want it to be my husband. Yeah, I don't think he would handle the situation well, and I trust my sister. And I also known my sister longer. And so like people sometimes think it has to be the same person. It doesn't. Like you can choose someone for your finances and somebody for your healthcare. It could be different. Yep. It has to be documented though.
Yes, it has to be documented. It doesn't happen any other way. When you don't tell the state what you want, and if the state is asked a question, they will fill in the blanks. And a lot of times it is, like they'll do it along the family tree. They'll kind of do whatever they think in a 30-minute hearing makes the most sense. Like they're not in a great position to make decisions.
And if there's family disputes, that's the issue. Like if it's not documented, like you said, like the black sheep child wants control, the other child wants control. Now we have a family dispute. Well, the court is going to just... Yeah. Yeah. So you want to have this all documented. Okay. So if you do all of your estate planning, which is obviously what we always encourage people to do, you can't guarantee this won't happen because we can never guarantee anything in life, but it's less likely that you would end up in a guardianship or conservatorship situation.
You're telling the court through your estate planning documents, like, hey, court, if you have to take my power away, these are the people that I want, that I trust.
So once again, we just have to have an estate plan if you don't want a movie made about you.
Yeah, that's the moral of the story, really. Yeah. So,
I also think it's a really important thing. It's really hard to sit down and talk to your parents about their finances. But I
Yes.
think that if you are in a family dynamic where you think you will be the caregiver for a parent, you most certainly want to sit down and make sure that the documents dictate that. Not even so much about going to them and saying what's going to happen with your money, but like if you end up in the hospital, do
Yeah.
I have the authority to be making healthcare decisions for you? And if it's not me, do you have somebody making
Yeah.
those? Because
Absolutely.
if you don't and you get incompatible, like they can go to the court and make a decision. So
Yeah.
like making sure that your parents, I think, also have the documents in place is important.
Mhm. Yeah. And I can send you the link for this. I have a
Okay.
video guide with tips about how to, because I know it's a hard conversation.
It's a hard conversation, yeah.
And like the best tip I can ever give is when you are doing your own estate planning, now you've just shifted the conversation that people are used to of like, oh, you're old and we're going to talk about your money now. To no, here is something that responsible adults do to not be a burden on
Yes.
the loved ones at the worst possible time. So have you done anything? I have.
Yeah,
Have you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important because they could even say, you can even say to your parent, like, I still have you down as a beneficiary on XYZ, or still would want you to be like, you might be really close to your mom. You might want your mom to be your healthcare proxy. And
Mhm.
maybe, and you should let these people know so that this isn't
Mhm.
a surprise. And to say, oh, I'm curious who your healthcare, what happens if you get sick? I know who takes care of me if I
Or
get sick.
like, mhm.
All right, so we will link everything. This is super helpful because once again, I was watching this and then I was reading about there's a million Americans in
And
this
this,
system, and
mhm.
that's terrifying to think you can be
Yeah.
stripped of your rights so easily, and then it could take
Mhm.
years and years to get them back.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Jen, this was wonderful. Thank you for coming on again to remind us of how important it is to have an estate plan at any age.
Yes, correct. So happy to be on again.
And we will link your video and your guide, I guess I would call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you the video guide to talk to parents, and I'll give you a link for the website with all the resources, including the courses.
Okay, amazing. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.